Hola, comrades! Today's topic of interest, Steins Gate. Though Evangelion at its best is masterful, and Full Metal Alchemist can evoke fascinating philosophical discussions, and Cowboy Bebop is unmatched in being able to craft mesmerizing atmosphere, the best and most consistently excellent anime series is Steins Gate. If you were to ask me why I believe this, I'd probably say the character work. But if you were to ask me why the character work is exceptional, I'd have to say the structure. With rare exceptions, anime series are significantly shorter than the live-action series that are widely and rightfully considered to be the best TV has to offer. For example, Mad Men and The Sopranos, two series regularly considered the best series of all time, have a little less than 100 hour-long episodes apiece. Meanwhile, Cowboy Bebop has 26 episodes, each of which are less than a half hour long. Because of this, even the best anime series lack the expansive, immense heft of a lot of the best live-action series. However, Steins Gate uses its relative brevity to its advantage. It doesn't try for grandeur, instead its scope is more intimate and inwardly focused. Its second half reflects its first. Unlike Cowboy Bebop, it never seems like its aim is more ambitious than its achievement. It feels, particularly in its first 22 episodes, like exactly the show it wants to be, tight and poignant and aching and contemplative. More importantly, it uses its restraint to its advantage. In a longer series, trying to make the second half reflect the first would be unwieldy and awkward, but here it's lucid. And not only is the second half a reflection, it is a thematically meaningful reflection. The first half is about the promise of time travel. The second half is about the consequences of time travel. Narratively, let's explore the implications of this. In the first episode, time travel saves the life of a red-haired science prodigy named Makase Kurisu. At this point, she is a stranger to the main protagonist, Okabe Rintaro, but they soon develop a love-hate relationship to disguise their growing romantic feelings for one another. It's nothing original, but it's done with heart and sincerity. A major reason why it works so well is how justified and sensible their iciness toward each other feels. It's never contrived. They've both experienced a trauma in the past, and as a result, they've erected walls to defend themselves. This is especially true in the case of Okabe, who has constructed an entire persona to insulate himself and comfort his childhood friend Mayuri, this persona being Hoin Kiyoma.
I, the mad scientist, Hoin Kiyoma, have triumphed over a twofold assault by CERN and the organization.
This persona is also where the title of the series is derived from, Steins Gate being, in the fantasy he constructs for himself, this force of fate and providence. Also, it makes sense why this iciness begins to thaw. They both respect each other as scientists. Though their backgrounds are different, they're both drawn to time travel and uncovering the secrets of what is possible by using it. Through their experiments, they realize they're drawn to each other as well. They're both hurting, and they grow to depend on each other for support. After he saves Makase, she joins his lab, and they unravel the secrets of time travel together. They discover the properties of what they term D-mail, through which they can send messages through time. The D stands for DeLorean, as in the car Marty McFly uses to travel through time in Back to the Future. As a side note, I love how a lot of these modern time travel narratives, meaning not only this show and the visual novel it's based on, but also my beloved Life is Strange, reference other time travel works. It grounds the narrative somewhat. As the narrative progresses, they invest themselves fully in time travel. It continues improving the world. One character, Ferris, who adopts a hyper-kawaii persona and runs a maid cafe to disguise her sorrow over the loss of her father, is able with D-mail to stop her father from getting on the plane that crashed and killed him. These successes imbue the process with a heightened relevance and majesty. Okabe believes time travel is the answer to all his problems, so he keeps using it, believing the grisly fate he fears will be stopped if he manipulates the timeline enough. However, this is not the case. Almost exactly halfway through the series, In episode 12, Dogma in Ergosphere, Mayuri is killed. This becomes the central event of the series. It single-handedly and instantaneously transforms time travel from being an activity of endless possibilities to an activity of endless perils. Time travel is no longer the solution, it becomes the problem. Throughout the first half of the series, time travel serves as pure wish fulfillment. That idea gathers speed throughout the first half before being completely shattered here. Again and again, Okabe attempts to save Mayuri by time traveling, but he fails. He realizes he can't save her unless he undoes the positive changes he has made. Just like the pleasures of time travel steadily grew throughout the first half of the series, the tragedy of time travel grows throughout the second half. When the D-mail helping the time traveler Suzuha is deleted, it is merely unfortunate, but when the D-mail stopping Ferris's father's death is deleted, it is heartbreaking. The lengths to which he must go to save Mayuri are agonizing, particularly considering he knows where this ends. The title of episode 12 is fascinating in this context. In physics, the ergosphere is a region around a black hole wherein the black hole's influence can be felt, but energy can still escape. The parallels in regard to his quest are clear. The fate which befell Mayuri is the black hole, and he believes, or at least hopes, he is stuck in the ergosphere, where he can escape from that fate even as it warps the space-time continuum. And indeed, he discovers, he can escape that fate, but in order to do so, he has to bid farewell to Makase. He has to make the choice to let one person he loves die in order to save another. After realizing at the end of episode 20 that the path on which he proceeds leads to Makase's death, he spends episode 21 trying to resolve this situation, before resigning himself to it in episode 22. His conscience assuaged only slightly when Makase encourages him to save Mayuri at all costs. This episode, Being Meltdown, is by far the best in the series. I included it as an honorable mention on my list of the best television episodes of all time. It could have been overdramatic, but instead the tragedy of their situation is played with subtlety. Though this situation is soul-crushing, Makase is resigned to it, and Okabe becomes resigned as well. Their wells of sorrow transformed into wistful, powerless melancholy. The episode follows Okabe as he talks with Makase and tries to talk himself into doing what he knows has to be done. There's no extra drama. There's nothing superfluous. This episode operates under the knowledge that the grand yet personal crisis unfolding is more than enough. It's more heartbreaking because it's so restrained. Now, that episode would have been heartrending even if letting Makase die was the only change that needed to be made. But that it comes at the end of a series of changes drastically amplifies the tragedy. And this entire string of tragedies is amplified by the carefree joy and optimism preceding it. Though the first half of the series is often criticized for being slow, its meandering pace and lighter tone is essential to make the second half as impactful as it is. Think of it like music. If the entire song is loud, then it can be exciting, but the volume doesn't register. However, if the song starts soft, before building in volume, then the climax is more rewarding. Its dynamics, its juxtaposition. While the first half of the series is not flashy, it is vital for laying the foundation for what follows. By contrasting the earlier serenity against the later fear and dismay, the impact is markedly increased. The show would have perhaps been better if it had stopped after episode 22, if only because the aching sorrow of that episode marks a high point in the intensity of emotion displayed. That the show continues after this is justified only by how it subverts the ideas established by the end of episode 22. The entire message of the show is, in effect, inverted. The first half of the series suggests time travel can be used to better the world without consequences. The second half of the series suggests trying to improve the world via time travel is counterproductive, and indeed, time travel causes more problems than it solves. However, these last episodes, plus the Steins Gate film, suggest one's problems can be solved with time travel if one is to persevere. It rewards Okabe for his relentless drive to create a world where he can save everyone. That this doesn't feel like a hastily added ending is because of the structural framework. Though Okabe's attempts to rewrite time were before presented as futile, they were never presented as anything less than noble and forthright. He never uses time travel to help himself become rich and powerful, a la Biff Tannen. Instead, he uses it to help others he cares deeply about. Despite the apparent futility of his efforts, he continues trying to change time. For this determination, he is eventually rewarded. Because of this, the positive ending, while not entirely organic, is nonetheless earned. Structure is vital. It is not one of the elements of storytelling that the ordinary fan thinks about. Unlike conflict, tension, and character development, it is not overt. Even in works with a distinctive structure, like Steins Gate, the structure is not visible to those who don't actively consider it, but it ought to be considered. As I often say, the what is less important than the how and the why, and structure is a major component of the why and especially the how. How are ideas advanced? How are the characters developed? How much setup is there before a given narrative beat? And how does the beat affect the characters and the narrative? How is a theme executed? How much time is given to various characters? How much should a character struggle before they are redeemed? How many chances should a character have to stay on the path of light before darkness consumes them entirely? These are all structural questions. Works that don't know how to structure themselves are confused at best, and vapid, shallow, and unsatisfying at worst. When a work like Steins Gate, however, actively uses structure to enhance its characters and ideas, magic occurs.
The world as we know it has been put to rights, and a future of chaos awaits us. This, my friends, is the choice of Steins Gate.
Here's a tip for everyone who wants to become a better viewer of stories, but especially critics and artists. Always examine the structure. Identifying the major thrust of a work is good, but the understanding that provides is facile. Anyone can convey, for instance, that a character is miserable, but a great artist always considers why they are miserable. And I don't mean something as simple as they've suffered a breakup. If that's what they're going through, focus is paid to how exactly the breakup makes them feel. The artist explains the exact combination of emotions rushing through the character. They elucidate what the relationship meant for the character and what led to the breakup. The great artist also considers how the misery affects the character. How do they react to it? Given the example of a breakup, does the character try to move on as quickly as possible, or do they prefer being alone because they don't want their heart to be broken again? This is even more important when theme is discussed. Often I hear fans and critics discuss how a work handles sexism, or the hollowness of the American dream, but when I watch it, I find these topics handled in only a straightforward, cursory manner. It is a critic's duty to contemplate the themes of a work, sure, and there are always themes. Any critic who looks at a work and says, "There are no themes here," is not a good critic. But if a theme is handled poorly, or if it is so faint that it could only have been there by accident, that should also be acknowledged. Evangelion, for example, is not brilliant because it is about the psychological trauma that would push teenagers to pilot giant mechas and the trauma resulting from piloting giant mechas. It's brilliant because of how it structures itself around these themes, especially near its end. We have Asuka and Shinji dealing with their parental troubles, and Rei deep in an existential crisis. This is why great structure is so vital to successful storytelling. Anyway, if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce even more well-structured content. Also, don't forget to like, and comment, and subscribe, all that clever stuff. Adios, comrades!